Okay, we're now ready to start making some more complicated shapes using some more advanced techniques. So the first object we're going to make from another sheet of shapes called 20 more ISO shapes is this object, and it's called shape number 11. So a number of things we're going to learn here: how to round these edges and how to make a cutout with this shape and locate it on the place that we want it to be. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually make a big block, and there are of course many ways to make this shape. I'm just going to show you one way. So whenever you start a new object, you need to know what your overall height and width dimensions are so you know what size object to start out with. So I'm going to start out with a length of, from counting from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I came to this point in the red lines because before this edge was rounded, if I would extend from the very edge of this semicircle, if I extend that line out and then I extend this edge out, they stop here and form a cross. And that's where the hard edge was before we rounded it. So that's where I need to count to if I'm going to make my big block before I round the edges. So we had 11 in this direction, and then I need to count my overall height doing the same thing. So I extended at the very top of the object and then the very side of the object, and where those cross is where my corner was before we rounded the edge. So if I count from the very top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 by 11. So that's what I'm going to go into Inventor and make to begin with, a 2D sketch. I'm going to make it on the XY plane just so that it's vertical. And I'm going to start with a rectangle and make it 11 inches long by 6 wide. And that's going to make us start out with a giant box. And then we're going to go back to the drawing and figure out how deep does this giant box need to be. So I'm going to count it from front to back, and you can do that in a number of places. I'm going to start in this corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it needs to be 4 deep. So I'm going to come back into Inventor, finish my sketch, and extrude 4 inches. And I'm going to go through some of these Inventor steps pretty quickly because you've been working with Inventor for a while now. So I'm going to change the 1 inch to 4, enter, and now I've got a giant block. Okay, that looks very different from this. The first thing I'm going to do is cut out this big area right here, which means I'm going to decide on a box to draw on the top of my big block, and I'm going to extrude it inward. And so the overall height of my object is 6, but if you see there's only 2 inches left here, so I'm going to take 4 inches of height out of this area. So I need to see how, what are the dimensions of this area I'm going to cut out. So if I go from either this corner out to where I made my cross here, or I could go from here out because this is the absolute max of that piece of the object. So I'm going to start from this corner and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we know it's going to cut out all the way through, and we already said it's going to cut 4 down. So it's going to be a 7 by 4 box. So let's go ahead into Inventor and draw that. I'm going to start another sketch on the top, and I'm going to start in this corner just so that it's oriented the same way that it is in our ISO drawing. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go over 7. I think that's what we counted. And it's 4 deep, it's all the way deep. And there's the box that I'm going to cut down. So if I finish that sketch, now I can extrude this shape, and I don't want to go in that direction. I want to cut, and I want to cut down, and it just kind of defaulted, made a guess at 4, and that's actually what I want because the width and the depth of that cutout are the same. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And then this is what we're left with so far. I'm going to click home. And you can see this still looks very different from our object. So the next thing I'm going to do that's going to make a huge difference is round some of these edges. And then I'm going to use these marks I've made with these lines again. So before the rounding, our box comes out to this point. And if you recall about a circle, if you've taken geometry, all the way around a circle, the radius is the same. And when you use this tool that's called fillet, you need to know what the radius of your circle is. So from the center, well, actually, if you're looking at this drawing, to not confuse you, we have a smaller circle, and then we also have a larger circle, which is what this semicircle is a part of, even though we don't see the rest of it. So the semicircle could continue all the way around and meet back into an entire circle, but on this shape, it's just a semicircle. So the radius of the semicircle is going to be larger than the radius of this inside circle, and we'll get to that later. So the radius of this larger semicircle that's our rounded edge still has the same center as the smaller circle. So if I count from the center, 1, 2 is the radius of this larger semicircle. I can count from the center out to any point on that semicircle and it's going to be the same. So from here, 1, 2, from here, 1, 2, down any line. It has to be down a solid line. So if I go back into Inventor, there's a tool called fillet, and if I click on fillet and then click on an edge, it's going to ask me what do I want the radius of that rounding to be. That's what fillet means. So I don't want it to be 0.125 inches. We said the radius is 2 inches. So I'm going to type in 2 inches, and you can see it rounds it very nicely. And then I can do the same fillet to this other edge, and it's going to default to 2 inches again, which is what I want because that's the same radius all the way around that semicircle. So now when I'm done with that, I'm going to click OK. And now you can see we're getting a little closer to the shape that we wanted. And then next, I'm going to go ahead and round these two side edges. And if we go back to our drawing, again, here's the center because we have a large semicircle and then we have this other semicircle on the inside. So the large semicircle is again from the center 1, 2. I can check it in a lot of different spots, 2 or 2. So our radius of this semicircle is 2 again. So again, I'm going to do fillet. I'm going to click on this edge and I'm going to actually click on this edge in the same step because it's the same radius and click OK. So now we're again getting closer to our final object shape. And next we're going to do this cutout, this hole that goes all the way through. And this circle has a radius of 1. So if I count from the center out to any point on this circle, it's going to have a radius of 1. So I'm going to first draw on this front face a circle. So I'm going to sketch a circle with a radius of 1. And I'm just going to put it anywhere right now and just type in 1. So there's the correct size circle. I actually made a mistake here. This is not the correct size circle because this dimension when I created the circle is giving me a diameter and not a radius. So I'm going to actually do Control Z and undo that and start over. Here's a circle. And you can see that it's telling me all the way across the circle, which is 2 times the radius, and 2 times the radius would be 1 times 2. So I'm going to put in 2 inches for the diameter, which is 2 times that radius of 1 that we counted in the picture. Now, this is not in the right location. So the next thing I need to do is dimension this and go from the center of the circle to the outside wall and tell it what I want that dimension to be. So if I look from the center to the outside wall is 2, because that was the radius of our hemisphere. So this is not quite right, so I'm going to tell it 2 inches from the side wall. And then I also need to tell it how far do I want it to be from the top of the circle. And it may be easier to go to the bottom. So I'm going to click on the dimension tool again, go from the center of the circle to the bottom. And now I'm going to show you how to put a little math in here. So to the bottom, our entire height was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I want it to be 2 from the top. So if I put in 6 minus 2 in this box, 6 minus 2 it's going to give me this dimension, which is 4. So 4 plus that 2 gives me my overall height of 6. So you can actually type formulas into Inventor, and it will do the math for you, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to finish this sketch now and extrude that hole right on through. Not going this way, going that way, and I like to just say all to make sure that if I update something later, it will continue to cut all the way through. And now say OK. So we're getting a little closer. The last thing we need to do is draw this shape, which has 2 arcs connected by 2 lines. And so I need to know several things here. I need to know the radius of this semicircle or this arc, which is 1. And the same on the other side, you have another arc of 1. And then between those arcs, we have lines that are going from here to here. So I'm going to count it 1, 2, 3, and it's the same on the other side, of course, 1, 2, 3. So I'm actually going to start with a line, because for me that's easier. I'm going to start a sketch on this face, and I'm just going to move it in the center a little bit and start with a line, and I'm going to just put it anywhere because we're going to dimension it later. And so we know this line wants to be 3 inches long. And then I'm going to go straight up to the arc tool and go from here, and I want my radius to be 1. So let's go back to our picture. Since my radius is 1, if I'm going across my arc, I want it to be 2 across, which is kind of the diameter of the circle or the arc. So I'm going to go down 2 and bring it out 1, because that's the radius, and I can pop it in place or I can type in a 1. So there's my first arc, and then I'm going to grab the line tool again and bring it down 3, hit enter, and then grab that arc tool again and just connect these together. Now I have some, make sure it's green when you click on it, and then I'm going to go out again, type in a 1, enter. So that is my shape. It was a little bit of a complicated shape, but we got it done. Now I need to dimension and show this shape where it needs to be. So from this line to this wall is a dimension. So let's go back over to our drawing, and that is 1. So from the edge to this edge of the cutout is 1. And same thing on the other side. So if I type that in, it's going to move my entire shape, which is nice. The other dimension that I have, I'm going to use this inside edge because it's hard to grab an edge of a circle. I'm going to go from the center of the circle to this edge and bring this dimension down. Now let's double check this because it's a little different from this edge being just a 1. So now I'm going from the center of the circle, because that's a point that's easy to grab with the dimensioning tool, to this edge. So if we count that, center to edge, 1, 2. So that's where I need this dimension to be. So 2. And now you see that it popped the entire shape out. So this is now, I gave it 2 dimensions and 2 directions, and like we could call this the X direction and the Y direction, and that's all we need to position it correctly. And now I can extrude. So I have to hover over this shape to tell it what I want to extrude, and then tell it the direction, and I can tell it all the way through, and click OK. And now we're done with this shape. And if I click on home, it's already kind of zoomed in properly. That's the correct shape. I could color it. I could do some other features just to make it look a little nicer. But this is our general shape number 11. Make sure that you have saved it on your Y drive. File, Save As, find your Y drive. And then make sure you take a screenshot and put it in the Hapara document. I'll show you that in just a second. So I'm going to call this, and this is what you need to call it, your first name, or your first initial, and your last name, or your first name. I'm going to do my whole name and my last initial. This is how I want you to do it. And then underscore, and this is called ISO shape 11. That's what I want you to, how I want you to name it, with your name in it. And so then you're going to take a screenshot, and in Hapara, if you look at, we're still in Unit 4, there's an assignment called ISO Shapes Assignment 1, and you have 2 boxes. So you're going to put 1 in shape 11, and then you're going to teach your partner how to make this shape. And then they're going to also put shape number 11 of their own that they made into Hapara assignment number 1. And there you go.